Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk on this highly uneventful week on the world stage. We're going to be talking about some Star Wars. It's episode 199 of this Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I'm the lead Southern California reporter for an editorial director for Star Wars content for Laughing Place. Sometimes it's a tongue twister to get out. This is, like I said, episode 199, creeping up almost there to 200 coming up next week. And we are going to be talking about the finale, whether it's the season finale or the series finale. We don't quite know, of the Acolyte, the new live action Disney Plus show from Lucasfilm. And for that conversation, I had invited back on the show my friend and fellow Star Wars fan, Liz Shannon Miller. Liz, how are you? Thank you for coming back on the show. What's been going on?
I've been keeping busy. I just did a week at the Television Critics Association press tour. So I'm about to return to normal life and have to figure out where my own meals come from. That's always a harsh reality of life after a big press event. I'm really happy to be here. You got to tease at the end of this episode what you've got planned for episode 200.
Well, I've already said, so every 10 episodes of Who's the Bossk, we do this thing called Mike and David Movie Club, and we alternate selections between my friend David Murto and I. And the movie, the only rule is that the movie has to be 1 degree from Star Wars in any way. And I told David he had to pick something momentous for episode 200. Epic. So he went with 2001 A Space Odyssey, which was the most highly regarded science fiction movie in the decade leading up to Star Wars. So
for sure.
We've already recorded it. It's ready to go. I just got to edit it and put it out, but that's coming out next week. It'll drop right before San Diego Comic-Con, so you can enjoy that on your commute down to San Diego if you're heading down there. Are you going to Comic-Con this year, Liz?
I am not, but I'm very excited to check out the action from afar. Like, usually it's pretty good. Usually there's some fun stuff going on.
Yeah, it should be a fun time for sure. Tell me a little bit about what's going on for you at consequence.net. Now, you just mentioned the TVA stuff, but what else have you been writing about over there?
Well, we just got done with two big lists of equal editorial value and import. The first was we ranked every Richard Linklater movie, which actually meant for me, I took a bunch of movies I hadn't seen before for writing up. And so I got to explore the wonders of me and Orson Welles and inning by inning, a portrait of a coach.
I forgot about me and Orson Welles. That was a good one. Do you like that one?
I did. I think I was expecting a lot less from it, but there's it's worth watching just for the recreations of Orson Welles' own adaptation of Julius Caesar for the stage. Like, it was really cool.
I'm trying to remember who played Orson Welles in that movie. I know Zac Efron was the me.
It's like a gentleman by the name of like Christian Kelly or something. He was just like, they basically went and found like a really good guy at doing Orson Welles, cool. As opposed to finding an actor who can do a lot of different things. So it wasn't
they didn't bring back Vincent D'Onofrio with Maurice LaMarche's voice like in Ed Wood.
No, or they didn't just have Liev Schreiber being hot as hell. So and then the other thing I did was I personally decided I wanted to rank every single celebrity who's appeared as themselves on the show Entourage. So all 123 of those cameos are now ranked and listed on consequence.net if you want to go read that.
Wait, see, what did you rank them by?
Just kind of like coolness, like not being a sexual predator.
Okay, where did M. Night Shyamalan end up on that list?
Actually, M. Night Shyamalan's in the teens. Like the thing about it was a combination of how cool, like, are they, like, were they cool to watch on the show, and how much did they also like let themselves. How much did they let their image be experimented with? Like, M. Night Shyamalan's cameo comes about a year after all the drama around and controversy around his diva-like behavior when it came to like letting people read the script for Lady in the Water.
Right.
And he really plays that up in the cameo. He's like making fun of himself for the thing that he was being criticized for a year beforehand. So it's actually pretty clever.
That's always good to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's like the cameos where it's like Hugh Hefner, boy, you're a cool dude, and we all like you. Definitely not gross and weird at all. Like it's those cameos I ranked lower. Also, Danny Masterson is still in jail, and good for that. Anyways,
remember, yeah. Remember James Cameron's Aquaman? I'm sure you talked about that quite a bit.
Oh, I talked about James Cameron's Aquaman. James Cameron is a great presence on that show. This is more entourage talk than anyone watching a Star Wars podcast wants to hear.
Exactly. We could go on and on.
That is literally what I've been up to.
And we would hug it out if we were in the same place.
I need that at this point.
Let's do the 5 Star Wars questions. Liz,
let's do it.
You've been on the show every season since we started, but I know you got grandfathered in, to use a very patriarchal term. You got grandfathered into skipping one of the 5 Star Wars questions because the first time you were on, I hadn't invented it yet. But we're going to be okay with that, and we're going to graduate you to level 5 regardless, because you have done all 5 seasons. You ready for the final level of the 5 Star Wars questions?
Mike, not only am I ready, I actually, every time, since you instituted the 5 Star Wars questions, you've always been very good about send them out in the agenda in advance. And every time I have just been like, oh, I'll figure it out when he actually asked me the questions. This time I prepared.
Okay.
I have answers for you at the ready.
Number 1, what is your favorite Star Wars movie poster?
Okay. So, objectively, I think the best Star Wars movie poster across the board, no questions, is the Episode 1 teaser poster where it's baby Anakin Skywalker and his shadow looks like Darth Vader.
We were so young and naive at that point.
We were yes, but it's still just conceptually a perfectly rendered image. That's
absolutely
that's what you need. But I'm not in my usual recording place. I'm staying in the guest room at my parents' house for a brief period of time. And I was talking to my mother earlier. My mother's a bigger Star Wars fan than me. Certainly she's been at it longer. They saw episode 4 like twice or 3 times.
You can just call it Star Wars. It was just called Star Wars.
They saw Star Wars at the Grauman's Chinese more than once on opening weekend. Because they would, that was back when, if you saw a movie in the theater, you could just stay in the theater and watch it again if you wanted to. The theater didn't care. Anyway, so
and they would play those serials. That's probably going back longer than I. Yeah, go ahead. Never mind.
Yeah. Anyways, the point is,
I told you before, but I'm very jealous of your nerd parents. Go ahead.
They're cool people. Anyway, so I asked my mom this question, and my mom's answer was she's still really fond of the Star Wars poster where it was clearly like designed by the same person who did like the covers for Conan the Barbarian novels.
Yeah.
And so it's like bare-chested Luke Skywalker with his lightsaber pointed at the sky, and Princess Leia is clinging to his leg, like she's a real feisty dame. Like, yeah. So for my mom, I must mention this.
There's been some great ones over the years, but yeah, your choice of the teaser poster for the Phantom Menace is a pretty great one. Number 2. What is your favorite Star Wars fight scene or action sequence?
Now, there's so many good options. And I think this is one where, like, I could say, Battle of Yavin still is the Battle of Yavin. It's amazing. Duel of the Fates is Duel of the Fates. It's amazing. I feel like you probably have gotten those answers already.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to pick something a little more unconventional. Maybe someone else has already picked this. But there's something to the opening sequence of Star Wars The Last Jedi, where it's just the beautiful simplicity of we are going to drop bombs, and that is going to solve the problem, and we just need to get in. What is the name of Rose's sister?
This came up in trivia like a month ago, and I totally blanked on Rose's sister's name, and I'm gonna blank again.
I'm looking it up. Paige Tico making her last ditch effort to save the mission. Like it's just a beautifully executed sequence, and it's a view on Star Wars that we hadn't really seen before. I mean, even if you're not a Last Jedi person, and we don't need to dig into that about you as a person, but even if you're not a Last Jedi person, the way that scene is constructed is just so good.
Yeah.
And
No, I remember walking out of that movie and saying, "Oh, it opened with like a little short film about war," you know.
Yeah.
And there are, of course, as you get with every piece of Star Wars content that comes out these days, there were complaints about, oh, they leaned in too much to the humor with Poe Dameron's banter with General Hux, or people didn't like that there were bombs in space, which we've had before in Star Wars. But either way, I think it's like you said, a very well constructed scene by Ryan Johnson and everybody who contributed to that. So love that choice, and we definitely have not had that before. Number 3, what do you consider to be the coolest on-screen Star Wars costume? And please be specific. If you're going to say Han Solo, say Han Solo just after he wakes up from the carbonite, or you know what I'm getting at here. So what do you think, Liz? Coolest costume?
Well, I feel like to name anything Han Solo wears would be cheating, because just anything Harrison Ford wears is automatically the coolest thing you could wear.
Right.
I've got a 2-part answer, because I'm going with the girls for comfort. I think you can't beat Princess Leia's New Hope dress with the hood.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
it looks cozy for space travel, which we all know is very cold.
Right.
It's got some movement to it. It's a cool looking outfit. I you can't fault that the costume designer for the first Star Wars. Like whoever that person was, I guess know the name, but they really came up with some iconic looks for every single character that really hold up. But for style, it's got to be a Queen Amidala costume, and I'm going to go with her celebration, her white celebration feather dress from the end of Episode 1.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, talk about a study in like juxtaposition, because those costumes in the original film are so minimalistic compared to what you get from Queen Amidala in the prequels. But
yeah,
yeah,
the
I
excess
like.
is marvelous.
Yes, definitely memorable for sure. All those costumes, and again, I'm blanking on the name of the costume designer for any of these films, so shame on me. And let's move on to the next one. If you could, oh, this is a good one, and it's really the only negative one in all these 5 Star Wars questions. I just had to, before we wrapped up with the final level, I had to get in one negative one here. If you had the power to erase one piece of Star Wars media, or one element of the Star Wars franchise entirely from existence, what would it be?
I hate to say it, but my brain already kind of quasi deletes Rise of Skywalker from existence. Like my brain is just like, wait, was there a 9th movie? I don't recall that. We certainly haven't watched it twice in the theater. The second time to make sure it was as bad as it was the first time. So yeah, it's just such a bummer. It's such a bummer that Episode 9 is not good. Like, it should be good.
Yeah, I struggle. I absolutely struggle with that movie as well. And I say my critique of that movie is that Ryan Johnson, first of all, it was probably, I think we can all say it was probably a mistake to make the sequel trilogy as like a game of telephone, where one filmmaker is kind of handing it off to the next. There probably should have been one creative.
It could have been okay if they had just been like, well, we aren't going to hit that release date because we lost our director. We maybe should take another year. Yeah. Hey, if they had taken the exact same situation, exact same like setup, they had just been like, let's just give J.J. Abrams an extra year to figure out how this works. Apologies for swearing. And it should have been fine. But yeah.
It's weird that the stream actually like cut out just as you were swearing there. So I think it maybe bleeped it for me, but I'll double check.
Yes, but I'll be more careful of that going forward.
No, that's fine. Yeah, but my critique always was that Ryan Johnson with The Last Jedi said yes and using improv terms to The Force Awakens, and then when JJ came back for Rise of Skywalker, he said no, but with kind of doubling back on a lot of the stuff, the interesting stuff that to me was added for The Last Jedi. But yeah, I mean, it has its elements that I enjoyed. We've talked about this at great length on this podcast, but yeah, that's the one that I struggle with of the new movies for sure. Number 5, and the 5th and final of the final level of the 5 Star Wars questions. This is an optimistic one, looking forward to the future of Star Wars. What do you personally want to see happen with the Star Wars franchise in the future?
Mike, I'm going to say it. And more creative voices to have the opportunity to tell their own stories and to tell stories in this universe in ways that aren't the ways we've just kind of gotten used to it. Like I love the idea of Star Wars with a much less of a monolith, and I love the idea of it opening up its playing field in this way. And we're getting that to a degree. We're seeing people who aren't named Dave Filoni get to create stories. Though, as we'll probably get into in a bit later, like I am deeply concerned about whether or not that'll actually happen. I'm just stating this is my hope and my hope for the future. And Mike, I can't hear you right now. I think we might have.
I have a little bit of editing to do in this portion of the show because I missed the very beginning of what you said there. We had a little dropout. Either it was on my end or your end. So if you could just say like the first sentence again of what you just said.
I think the first sentence of what I said was, I think the thing I most want to see going forward in the Star Wars land, in the universe of Star Wars, is more stuff like the Acolyte. By which I mean opportunities for storytellers to create their own stories within this universe.
Yeah, and I heard the rest for sure. And yeah, I can't agree more. I think that experimentation is great. And I keep hearing this criticism that it's fanfic, that it's like officially sanctioned fanfic. And I couldn't want, like, that's what I loved in the 90s when I was growing up on the expanded universe of novels and comics, is that we were getting this officially sanctioned fanfic that George Lucas wasn't really involved with almost at all. And a lot of it was really fun and great, and some of it was not great. But, you roll the dice. If you don't like something, you'll get more later. That's always my philosophy. But yeah, I would love to see different, from people from all walks of life coming in. And that's kind of what they're doing right now. I like you, I hope it doesn't become a monolith, like you said, with Filoni. But, I am glad there's somebody in charge now creatively, and I hope that they continue, like you said, this trend of bringing in creative types, diverse voices. Yeah,
diverse voices and also diverse stories. Like finding, like, and they've been good about figuring out ways, figuring this sort of thing out. But yeah, like I said, I think we'll probably talk more about this when we talk Acolyte in detail, because. But yeah, that's where I land. I just want more people to get to tell Star Wars stories.
Me too. Always want to see that. Let's go into some Star Wars headlines really quickly. We got a trailer for season 2 of Young Jedi Adventures, Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures. It's an animated series for young ones, for younglings, for little tykes. It's on Disney Plus and Disney Junior, and the second season is coming out August 14th. I watched the trailer. It seems like more of the same fun young Jedi adventures that you expect from that we saw in season 1. Have you watched the show at all, Liz?
I haven't watched enough of it for sure. Who do you think is the cutest young Jedi on Young Jedi
Well,
Adventures?
I think hands down it's got to be Nubs, the little blue, not Ewok.
Yeah. I would agree with this.
We have a couple Nubs plushes in our apartment. I think one that I bought and one that was sent to me. But yeah, we like Nubs, and I actually haven't seen this whole show either. It is targeted at a much younger age than either of us. But
was it?
Yeah, go ahead.
When we went to that press event at Disneyland last year, did we draw Nubs? Is that who we drew?
I did. Yeah, yeah, that's right. You sat next to me for the animation building, animation studio.
Yeah, it was. It's the portion of California Adventure where you can go. Right. You get to go learn how to draw a character, and they taught us how to draw Nubs.
I still have that drawing somewhere. Did you keep yours?
Oh God, I'm not actually sure. I usually keep stuff like that. It's somewhere. I bet I'll find it in a bag in like 3 years.
Yep. And you can watch more Adventures with Nubs and Friends on Disney Junior and Disney Plus coming August 14th. Speaking of cute little creatures in the Star Wars galaxy, we have a 4-issue Marvel Comics miniseries called Star Wars Ewoks coming in October. And this was announced in honor of the 40th anniversary of the Ewok Adventure TV movie, also known as the Caravan of Courage. And I think it's fun that we're getting a new Ewoks miniseries. It's going to be written by Steve Orlando. I think he's a fairly well-known comics writer, and illustrated by Alvaro Lopez and Laura Braga. Is this something that you would check out, Liz?
I mean, I'm an Ewok girl. Why not? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of Ewoks are we getting? Are we just they're gonna murder some people, right? Like, that's Ewok. That's the. Okay, I think we had a blip, but we're back.
Yeah. Well, I just was going to say, yeah, I think in the synopsis that they put out, they mentioned that it was going to take place immediately after Return of the Jedi. So we'll kind of see a follow-up on what was happening with the Ewoks on the forest moon of Endor after Return of the Jedi. I'm looking forward to that. That should be a lot of fun.
I hope it's largely about the Ewoks just forming a government and like it becomes like Ewok West Wing. There we go. That's my pitch. That's my pitch for the Ewoks comics.
West Wing, entirely in their language and untranslated for
1000%.
Much like the holiday special with the Wookiees. Yeah, I know you were thinking that too, right? Okay.
Of course.
This week we got one new Star Wars comic book. It was Star Wars, the current volume of Star Wars, number 48 by Charles Soule. It actually is a follow-up to a storyline that we got back in 2015 in a mini series that was called Star Wars Princess Leia, where Leia meets up with the survivors of Alderaan. They have like a survival fleet. There was like a fleet of ships that was not on the planet when it got exploded. And this is a follow-up to that story, which I thought was interesting. I thought this had been long forgotten about. So Charles Soule has taken it upon himself to follow up on that story. Very interesting. Check that out. That's available now. And then Hot Toys has announced a new Imperial Praetorian Guard deluxe action figure. This is the Praetorian Guard from The Mandalorian Season 3, not from The Last Jedi. It's the red-suited, red-cloaked guards that guard Moff Gideon in the finale of The Mandalorian Season 3. Check that out. We have pictures of that on laughingplace.com. And then speaking of toys, I was sent a nice box of Acolyte action figures, including this guy right here, Master Soul.
That's great.
And we also got the 2 lightsaber forged lightsabers from Hasbro. I did a whole unboxing video of both of these products. All 6 of the first wave of Acolyte action figures, the 2 lightsaber forged lightsabers. You can watch that unboxing video right here on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. All that stuff was really fun. And thank you to Hasbro for sending that over to us to check out. Let's get into our main topic for this week's episode. And before we do, I just want to acknowledge, we are doing this live. And if you would like to comment or ask questions, please do, and we'll be happy to address them. For example, Aiden Sosa said, I am first.
Hi, Aiden.
Congratulations on that to Aiden. And please, we'll be happy to address whatever concerns you may have. The Acolyte is over for the season. We don't know if it's over for good. We're going to get into that in a little bit. This final episode was simply called The Acolyte. So not much to discuss there about the title. But Liz, before we talk about this latest episode, the finale, I want to ask you, what were your expectations going into this series, and what did you think of the first 7 episodes, not including the finale?
Well, Mike, I think you, as someone who also now professionally consumes a lot of pop culture, I think you probably share a similar thing with me, or you might understand that, like, I get so exhausted by knowing so much about stuff in advance that whenever I have the opportunity to know as little as possible going in, I take it. And so in this case, like, I wasn't doing any interviews. I was just going to enjoy a Star Wars show when the screeners came to me. So I purposely kind of avoided learning anything I could about the Acolyte going in. I don't want to say I had really high expectations, mostly because I know that, spoiler alert for I think later in this conversation, I know the way that Star Wars maybe treats female creators behind the scenes wouldn't necessarily lead to it having the most welcoming reception. So I was like trying not to get my hopes up too much, I think, to some degree. But I was excited for it, and I just think, like, on a cast level, I was just like, there's some cool people in this show, and I want to see what they're going to do with lightsabers, and I'm interested in what they're going this time period they're going to explore, because I actually, my reading of the extended universe isn't as what it could be, so I don't know a ton about the Old Republic, and so there's just all these like really interesting question marks to me, and I was really excited to kind of dive in and find out. So my impression of the first 7 episodes was I was having a good time. I had a good time. I was, the first 4 I got to see as a group and with the screeners. I thought the mystery being set up was interesting. One of the few Star Wars novels I have read is The Courtship of Princess Leia. So I was aware of Force Witches and was hyped about them.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Jodie Turner-Smith playing a Force Witch is something I might have written in a dream journal. That's cool. There's so much cool stuff about the show, and I had a good time on the ride. Like, it was, I think my biggest issue with the first 7 episodes, and it also kind of continues into episode 8, is I kept getting really attached to characters that kept dying. Like, boy, does this show have a body count, and I am still mad about Yord. Yord is a great guy. I love Yord. Yord is my favorite, and I miss you, Yord, and you'll live in my heart always.
Did you consider yourself a member of the Yord Horde while that was briefly a thing, or did you?
I didn't know that was briefly a thing, but I need a T-shirt now. Where are the T-shirts, Yord Horde? Come find me. Bring me a T-shirt.
I'm sure you can get a Yord Horde T-shirt somewhere. Let's say hi to Patrick. I'm sorry, hi, Patrick Radiker in the chat here. Glad to catch the live recording again. Yes, go ahead, Liz.
I was just going to say, is Yord. It's a great name. Just say it out loud. It just, I would literally a couple of days after I watched the screeners, I was like puttering around my apartment, just saying Yord, my guy Yord. Love Yord.
That's it. Interestingly and similarly, for a while I was saying the phrase Master Vernestra in a terrible approximation of Lee Jung Jae's voice, because I loved the assonance of that phrase in his. I won't attempt it here, but exactly.
It's lyrical. There's a beauty to it.
Yes. Now, were you a fan of the Russian Doll series?
Oh yeah, and I think season 2 less than season 1, but I thought Russian Doll was a really strong story, a really strong series with such a clever point of view on a trope we've seen a lot of times, and it was cast beautifully. So I was also seeing people like Charlie Barnett and Rebecca Henderson. That's right?
Yes.
See, is I love it when creators are just call up their friends and bring people in. It's nice to know that people are friends and they want to work together again. It's nice.
That I always love that when filmmakers have a troupe.
You
go see a Wes Anderson or Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and they all have the same actors.
They have their guys.
Yeah.
I want to be somebody's guy sometime. That'd be great. I guess I'm your guy. I'm your guy. I get to come back every once in a while.
Exactly. And people, again, I don't want to harp too much on the bad faith criticisms of this show, but the cries of nepotism with Rebecca Henderson's casting, have you seen a Tim Burton movie? Have you seen literally any filmmaker who has put their significant other in a TV show or a movie? This has been a thing for many. I mean, I guess that's just a problem with nepotism in general, but is it a problem? You know them, you know their talents. Yeah.
It's not nepotism if they're not your kid. That
right.
we already have enough of a problem talking about nepotism right now. Can we at least remember what the word means?
Right.
It's not if someone is a seasoned professional that you've worked with on a previous project and you decide to bring them into your next project because they are a seasoned professional and you are very, very capable of understanding their talents, that doesn't count as nepotism. That counts as working with seasoned professionals. It's called being a goddamn creative. Mike, I get so delightfully angry on your show. I really enjoy it.
I love it. You know what? Yeah. I want passion on this show for sure. Let's talk about the creative team behind this episode. It was directed by Hanel M. I'm gonna get it right. I'm going to get it right.
Okay,
Hanel M. Culpepper, who has done a lot of TV. She's done Westworld, Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, and the list goes on if you look at her IMDb filmography. The writer was Jason McAuliffe from the Heathers TV show, which I didn't even know was a thing. Were you aware of this? Oh, I lost you there again.
Yeah, that was on me.
Okay.
My internet just kind of like plooped out.
That's okay. Were you aware of the Heathers TV show, Liz?
Yes, I believe she's the first Black woman to direct the pilot of a Star Trek show.
Yeah,
I believe she kicked off Star Trek Picard.
yeah.
No, she's done great work.
Yeah, it looks she's got an amazing filmography there going on IMDb. And then this guy Jason McAuliffe wrote created the TV show of Heathers. Were you aware of this?
I was not aware that the creator of Heathers, the TV show, Heathers. That's actually. I'm glad that it's nice that he got the opportunity to do this, because Heathers was kind of considered to be one of the worst TV shows to premiere in recent years.
Okay.
It was so badly received. I forget exactly how it worked, but I think it got bumped off its original network and was then kind of burned off in reruns on the Paramount network or something. Heathers was, I'd have to look back at everything that happened, but Heathers was not a success. And I am just glad to hear that this guy is getting paid work, because no one wants to think about a guy going broke because he wrote a very bad TV show.
I'm sorry to hear that, but still getting some work. That's good. The director of photography and the editor were the same as the last couple episodes, James Friend and Cheryl Potter. What did you think of the finale? Let's get into that. Anything stand out to you about this last episode that we have so far?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me, and again, this goes into my whole not trying to know too much about something before I watch it, if I can help it.
Yeah.
I legitimately started watching the finale not being totally sure if it was going to be a series finale or a season finale.
Right.
And honestly, if you'd asked me to place a bet at the beginning of the episode, I probably would have said series finale, if only because they kept killing everyone off.
Yeah.
It's how many characters do they have left to be in a second season? So the biggest surprise for me was the fact that it was very much a season finale. It was very much a beginning of the story. And I definitely aside from the part where they killed off more characters I liked, and I don't know who, I have a vague sense of what season 2 would be. I appreciate the fact that it really is the season finale. I really do. And okay. I would like more stories from this universe. I would like to see a season 2. That being said, I feel a little uncertain about what that season 2 would be.
Yeah.
So are we just kind of, the only other big complaint I might have is that I feel like we kind of did. I feel like the big fight in the finale was kind of a little repetitive of, the confrontations we'd had with Manny Jacinto earlier in the season. And it felt like we were retreading ground, but yeah.
Liz, I have really great news for you.
Yeah.
You said you liked getting angry on my show.
Yeah. Oh, I have that tab open. I'm ready for this. Let's talk about it. All
right. Phoenix Force says Star Wars is about white men swinging lightsabers. Keep all that woke crap out of my Star Wars. First of all, I don't think everyone is afraid to say it.
I was gonna note. I was gonna compliment Phoenix Force on his bravery.
Wow, yeah,
the first person.
This is really original.
Person. What a hero! God, I mean, I'm just going to go turn in my feminism card now that you've changed my mind about everything. God almighty, get the hell out of here, man.
Very brave of you to say that.
I don't want to chase people off your show, Mike. Can I chase that guy off your show?
Yes, please do. Yeah, I think I was rooting for this to be self-contained. I think that was my big thing. I think just because, and I may have talked about this with you last year about the Ahsoka show, where I just I was so scared that they were going to leave some dangling plot threads and that we weren't going to get more, and that was kind of where I stood with the Acolyte as well. I just kind of wanted a self-contained story that had a nice, tight, wrapped up, tidy ending, all the mysteries solved. Nothing else to worry about. I have this anxiety, this open-ended anxiety where I just I don't want the story to go unfinished. And I feel like that is where the fear lies right now. But otherwise, I enjoyed it. Otherwise, I was on board. I just really hope that they get to continue it, because it's by the end of this episode, like you said, you were pretty sure creatively that they wanted to have a second season going.
We're talking spoilers, right?
Yes, yeah.
You don't drop a Yoda and you don't and without plans to deliver on that.
Yeah.
You don't tease Yoda.
And that scene very much felt like it was supposed to go after the credits. Did you feel that way?
I absolutely did. And I in fact scrolled to the end. I mean, at this point you watch a Star Wars show, to scroll to the end of the credits no matter what, just in case. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like lately there's been a real trend away from post-credit sequences, and there's a part of me that respects that. Because I do think there was an audience frustration with the idea of oh, I didn't get the full story because I needed to leave before the credits were over, or Disney, the Disney apps kicked me back to the main screen before I could get to the credit sequence or whatever. And I do respect the idea of let's just let people be sure that the story is done before the credits roll. But I did like the surprise of it, the Easter eggy element. This is more of a rant that I'll say. I'm seeing Deadpool and Wolverine next week, and if that doesn't have a post-credit sequence, then I'm definitely going to go on a real rant about this, because you spent all these years training me to really appreciate the post-credit sequence, and then now you're taking them away. I don't like it.
I will be shocked if Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't have a post-credit sequence.
Or
but I'm kind of okay with, I am kind of okay with letting it be a Marvel thing. And I was thinking back to the times when Star Wars has done it, at the very end of the Phantom Menace, you hear Darth Vader breathing. There was that little Easter egg, the Darth Vader breath at the end of the Phantom Menace credits. And then at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian, we got the teaser for the Book of Boba Fett, which I enjoyed that. I thought that was fun. And it kind of worked as a post credits. But I also saw in an interview that Leslie Headland said that the Darth Plagueis cameo, which we're going to talk about in a bit here, was originally planned to be the stinger, not the stinger, but the final shot in the episode proper. So I'm guessing when they had it put together that way, then Yoda could have been the post credits. And that structurally, I think that would have made sense. But when they reorganized the episode and put Plagueis earlier on, maybe they bumped Yoda up into the main part of the episode. Patrick said he's very interested in that last shot. I just finished Defy the Storm, which is a High Republic novel, and that has influenced how I see that last shot with Yoda. Interesting read on that, Patrick. What did you want to say, Liz?
Oh, nothing. I'm also interested in this.
I think Yoda has been complicit in some cover-ups, I guess we can say, both in the High Republic and I guess later on in the prequel trilogy. He's not as receptive to some of the ideas that will eventually be the downfall of the Jedi Order, so maybe Yoda's not the 100% lawful good that we always thought he was. I don't know.
Well, I think that's something that the Acolyte is really well positioned to explore, which is, and I think on a thematic level, and I think it's something that you also get in Andor to some degree, which is a really interesting examination of systems and how corruption can affect them. And, I think, we got a lot in the prequels of like the Jedi is not a perfect institution. They have a lot of flaws. And I think, but it never got the kind of in-depth look that we've been able to get from something like the Acolyte, where we're able to really it's messed up what happened in the Acolyte. Like that was some messed up stuff. And I think as a result, it's a much more interesting show than say like, I don't know. I'm not going to compare it against anything else. I'm just saying, like, there's cool storytelling material there,
Right.
and that if we really dig into what's going on within the Jedi Order in a second season, that it will only have more thematic opportunity.
Absolutely. And my fear going into both the High Republic on the publishing side and the Acolyte on the TV side was that I've never found the Jedi particularly interesting. They're kind of like Superman from the superhero universe, like, yeah, they're good. They have powers. Like, what interesting stories are there really to tell about that? But the fact that they went down the path of, oh, Jedi can be deeply flawed, just like anybody else, like that to me is interesting. That's the genius of this show to me, is the exploration of, even if a Jedi believes him or herself to be doing the right thing, they could be doing the wrong thing. And I think that's a great segue to talk about the actual plot of this episode and kind of where all these characters end up. I'm going to skip ahead actually on our little bullet point list and ask you about Master Soul. We'll start with him right here, because he's really the only character who is central to every episode of this series, because it jumps around in time. We get May and Osha at different ages, but I would say if we do have a consistent point of view character, it's Master Soul and his goals and wants and motivations in behaving the way he does, and where that ends up for him. And he has a speech at the end of this episode where he says that he did believe that he was doing the right thing on Brendock and that whole incident with the witch coven. But obviously some of the other characters disagree, and it led him down a path that eventually culminated in his death. What do you think, Liz? Where do you fall on the side of whether Master Soul was in the right in the way he behaved?
I don't think he was in the right, but I love the fact that he does, and I love the fact that that character is allowed to exist in that space of, like, it was a bad situation. He thought he made the best call, and he was, of course, very wrong. But I think the other element that really struck me was the fact that through his good intentions and through his behavior, he accidentally made himself the perfect patsy. And
Right.
and Master Venestra.
Yes.
Master Venestra had no hesitation on taking advantage of that. Like, that was kind of cool.
Yeah. That's the other thing too that I'm interested. I wonder if they're going to explore this in the novel, because Vernestra Rouault, I'm still not sure how to pronounce her last name since they haven't said it in live action, but she is one of the central characters in the High Republic novels. And I wonder if we're going to see her, because they kind of have to bridge that gap between the novels, which are about 100 years before the Acolyte. If we can see her character kind of follow, take a hard turn down the path to where she is, just a little more cynical in the Acolyte than we have seen her behave in the books. But I'm curious to see if they're going to explore that in some of the ancillary materials. Let's talk about May and Osha, who are really I don't know, I guess you would say Osha is probably the protagonist of the show, although, there's a lot of different points of view. It's kind of a Rashomon thing, like we talked about last week. But how did you feel about where both Osha and her not so twin sister, as we found out in this episode, May, how did you feel about the way their path wound up in this episode?
It's weird that I feel like I connected the least with their storyline. And I think it's just, and part of it was just like, I never really hooked. I think probably my least favorite part of the show was the whole twin element. And I think part of it was just like, I think didn't necessarily buy Amanda Stenberg's performance as like both characters. I didn't think they were different enough.
Yeah.
This is one of my bigger critiques of the show, is that the twin fake out never really played for me from the beginning. And I thought Amanda was great. They're an amazing actor, but the actual execution of those scenes, like I just I didn't really necessarily care about them reconnecting as sisters, and I don't know necessarily why. I think mostly it was because, you know, we met from the beginning. We met May. May killed Carrie Ann Moss, and I have a really hard time forgiving anybody who kills Carrie Ann Moss. It's been a problem. You kill Carrie Ann Moss, you're not my friend. And so as a result, I wish I could have been more excited. I could have been more connected to it. And I like, you know, as justified as May's actions may or may not have been by the end of the season, it was still like, you know, it felt like a lot of real estate devoted to something that I didn't necessarily emotionally hook into.
You bring up a great point that it was hard to differentiate between the performance, I think, for both May and Osha. And I think oddly, when they were kids, because they were two different actors, even though those were two twin sisters in real life, it was a little bit easier to tell them apart, obviously, and performance wise as well, in addition to them both looking slightly different for being two actual different different people. But in this episode, we learn the big revelation, which I think a lot of people guessed, is that May and Osha are actually one person in two separate bodies. And this is the big reveal, the big realization that Master Soul has, that he tells everybody else by the end there. But what does that mean to you, Liz? Because I'm still struggling to wrap my brain about it.
It means absolutely to money. Yeah. It means absolutely nothing to me. Like it's you know, they're the same person. Like genetically identical twins are the same person. Like they're not the same person because one of them got to hang out with hot ass Manny Jacinto for several years, learning how to be a badass Sith. Yeah. And one of them went to, you know, mechanic school. Like they're not the same person, and like playing it like that, like it's I guess a nice touch, but on a basic scientific level, I don't see the difference between identical twins and from the same person. And on a practical level, no. Look at these two people. They're very different. Nature and nurture are both involved in the creation of a human soul. Like it's not that simple. So I admit I kind of like in talking about it, Mike, I confess, like, these are some of the plot holes that I maybe haven't like dug into too hard in my evaluation of the show since I watched the first 4 episodes. I haven't like properly nitpicked the back half of the season, if you will. And so it's, I don't know.
Well, I think we could say that, like on the surface level, the story of the Acolyte and of these two sisters is that they switch places, right? By the end, from the beginning to the end of this season, they have gone, you know, May was Manny Jacinto's Acolyte, and now Osha is. And now May has her memory wiped, and she's going to go and live in the Republic and maybe help Vernestra find Chimere or the Stranger or whatever we want to call Manny Jacinto's character.
So they'll basically have parallel experiences to each other going forward from the last time they were separated. And I guess maybe by the end of season 2, I will be corrected and be like, okay, now they are the same person because they've had the same experiences just in different orders. Like,
I just feel like that was treated as such a big reveal, and it kind of left me with a little bit of a shrug. Like, okay. I'm glad we're on the same page about that, because really the significance of it to me, in my read of what Master Soul was saying, is that he used it to determine that there must be a vergence on that planet, Brendok, right? That was what it was pointing toward, and what he wanted to prove to the Jedi Order is that there's this vergence there. And there are hints and theories that maybe because of the line of succession of the Sith and the fact that Darth Plagueis does show up in this episode, that maybe the power that's present on that planet, Brendok, is what is eventually used to create Anakin Skywalker. I don't know. Do you see a direct connection between those two things, or are we barking up the wrong tree there?
The problem is that on the one hand, it feels like it's a lot to be putting on that one thing, but on the other hand, Star Wars has made weirder flexes. So I mean, and I think also like it's certainly the sort of thing where it might not have been the intention at the beginning, but that's the writers of Breaking Bad didn't know what they were writing from season to season. They just made sure to pay attention to what they had already written and loop it in.
No, I know we've talked about this before, but yeah, that's my pet peeve in critique of TV is, they didn't have a plan from the beginning. No one ever has a plan from the beginning.
And the ones who had a plan shouldn't have had a plan because they should have adjusted it.
Yeah, you just have to be good at making up your story as you go along, because that's pretty much how stories are made up. George Lucas did the same thing with the original trilogy. Read those J.W. Rinsler books about how much George was winging it in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Definitely along the same lines there. I may have dropped out again. Liz, are you there?
Yeah, blip.
Okay. All right, let's talk about let's see, what else do we have here on the list? Okay, let's get into Vernestra Rwoh and her dealings with the Senate. This is the character played by Rebecca Henderson. She talks to a senator named Senator Rayencourt, played by guest star David Harewood. What do we know him from, Liz?
We know him for so many things. Love David Harewood. I mean, I wish I could. He's an amazing actor. He's done a ton of stage work. Are you looking him up? Because I confess that it's bad that I can, like, the first project and the only project I could really bring to mind was Supergirl, but he was Martian Manhunter on Supergirl a whole bunch.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And I'm gonna look him up because there's something he's an amazing actor. I think he was the actor in The Night Manager, who Olivia Colman was. Yes, he was on The Night Manager. He apparently at one point when they were filming The Night Manager, he had to tuck a piece of hair behind Olivia Colman's ear, and she was so flustered she couldn't concentrate because he's like, "Oh, David Harewood is touching me," and relatable. Like, David Harewood's a wonderful actor. He's been in so many wonderful things. Was he?
And he has. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm checking to see if he was in Titus. I think he might have. No, that was someone else. That was Henry Lennox. Yeah, but wonderful actor. Lots of great roles.
We get a great brief scene with him basically spelling out for us the future of the Jedi Order. And basically, he's not a Force user, but he predicts what's going to happen 100 years down the line. What did you think of this idea that the Jedi should have governmental oversight, which is also leading us down the path to where we get to in the prequel trilogy, where the Jedi basically become the army, the generals in the army of the Republic, which is not what they were intended to be at this point. But what did you think of this kind of B plot, the subplot of this episode?
Well, I think it speaks to what we were talking about before, which is that if the Acolyte does go into season 2, it becomes a really interesting storytelling opportunity for what is it like to be at this stage in the in a society, in an organization that potentially has flaws and potentially needs that kind of a government oversight, but will that also strip away the things that made it important to be operated independently?
Yeah. It's a very interesting part of Star Wars to me. I know people, I myself have complained about the endless senatorial meetings in the prequels, but you know what? Politics is interesting, and there have been a lot of stories in the expanded universe and in the novels and comics about politics in Star Wars that I find fascinating when they are done well. So yeah, I could see that becoming a very interesting part of season 2. Let's see, Liz, I want to get your opinion on something. We heard Kylo Ren's theme play throughout this season. It became a big question, like, why does Kylo Ren's theme play when Chimere picks up the helmet? And somebody asked Leslie Headland about this in an interview a few weeks ago, and she said, "Oh, this is definitely important, but I can't tell you yet. You will know eventually." I feel like I still don't know, but people have theorized that it might just be a thematic connection between what happens with Ben Solo and what happens with the characters in this show. What do you think that might be?
I mean, ever since I saw this in the outline, I was pondering it, and I think my best answer is, remembering how sexy the Sith can be. I don't know.
That's true.
I mean, it's like it's the sexy Sith theme, I guess.
Right. that could very well be it as well.
Make it evil but sexy.
Maybe that's what she was going for, because certainly Ben Solo had a lot of fans in the sequel trilogy in that way. And then, Chimere, or the Stranger, whatever we want to call him, has spawned
hot ass Manny Jacinto isn't maybe flying.
Right. People have been talking about his arms a lot, I guess is what we can say.
Because he's got him.
So I guess that question still kind of remains, and maybe it's something we'll get if we ever get a season 2. There were theories floating around about the Knights of Ren, but even in this finale episode, that theme music, I think it played over a scene with Master Soul in the ship following May and when she escapes in that other ship. So I don't know. I think that question is still dangling there.
It absolutely is. But now I really want to ask, I'm really curious about an important demographic of Star Wars fans that I don't know if I've checked in with properly. What do the Reylo shippers think of the Acolyte? Like, are the Reylo shippers like super on board with this show? Is it tapping into things that they really want tapped into? Or are they actively rejecting it because it is not actually Reylo and thus not interesting to them?
Well, they're holding hands at the end. I don't know if that's enough to get people going or whatever, but Patrick,
it's Star Wars, we learn to live with a little.
Patrick has 2 theories about the music. One, Chimere's story mirrors Ben's. Yeah, kind of like what I was talking about thematically. Chimere, number 2, Chimere survives and becomes the first Ren. I think that's kind of where so there's the Knights of Ren.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. For some reason, I was blanking on that.
Yeah. They are neither Sith nor Jedi, but they do use dark side force powers. And Kylo Ren becomes their leader by the time of the sequel trilogy. But we know that they were active in the decades leading up to that. So yes, that was where I was going with it. And I was a little bummed they didn't get to that. But again, I think they wanted to have a season 2. Which I guess this is a good time to ask, like, what do we think are the odds of this happening, Liz? Do we think they will get a season 2 of the Acolyte?
Well, it's really tough. You know what, honestly, I think would make more of a difference is if they had spent, like, I saw you've gotten some good comments here. And it's something that Kiki and Luca brings up is that the 180 million budget for this show, which is a lot of money. Yes. And there's a part of me that wonders if the odds of the Acolyte surviving would be better that's a lot of money. If there were more standing sets that they had built very specifically for the show. Like, it feels like a lot was shot on location. There are a couple of like regular locations they used. If they had spent a lot of, I'm basically thinking about how the Fox series, The Orville, got a second season entirely because it was an expensive show, but they spent most of their money building the spaceship. So once they built the spaceship, it was like, the more episodes we make, the more we amortize the cost of building that spaceship at the beginning.
Season 2 of the Acolyte has to take place entirely within the Jedi Temple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think besides that, I think critical reception has never, it doesn't feel like the only thing that matters when it comes to Star Wars. And when it comes to renewing Star Wars things, I'm not optimistic. I want to be more optimistic. I want to think that I want to think that it'll happen, and it could. It honestly could. I think especially when you consider that there were some fans of the Acolyte, like it wasn't universally reviled. And
Oh
And
yeah, no, I think it had a very vocal, positive response in certain circles,
right, and I
and
think that
negative response in other circles.
yes, and I do think that I do think to Lucasfilm's credit, it doesn't seem like if Lucasfilm was genuinely scared of the backlash from people like our friend what's his bucket that I'm not even bothering
Yeah,
remembering his name
let's not
because
even remember his name. Yeah,
we're not even remembering his name. But if people like what's his bucket uh really scared Lucasfilm, they wouldn't have greenlight the Acolyte in the first place,
right,
frankly.
right,
Like
right, right, right.
they and so I definitely don't. I definitely that gives me optimism. Like
Yeah,
that, but also I think everything's in a crunch. Everybody's looking for an excuse to not do anything. Just in terms of budgets and schedules
yeah,
and the post-strike economy and whatnot. So there's lots of reasons to not be optimistic, but I'm going to be, if only because I I would like to see at the very least what kind of new characters they'd introduce in season 2 for me to get
yeah.
attached to and then
Right.
horribly murder.
Because who's still surviving? We've got Vernestra, we've got May and Osha, we've got Chimere, and that's pretty much it of the regulars
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
show, right?
They killed everyone else. And
Now,
again, and that's
yeah,
kind of badass. I'm not lying to you, but
right.
I want my
Well,
boy Yord.
it's
I want
sort of
my
Rogue One-ish in Star Wars terms because we
yeah.
got introduced to a bunch of new characters and they all died at the
Yeah,
end.
like, well, and Andor is setting us up for something similar, though. At least,
Yeah,
like a few, like we know Mon Mothra is going to be okay,
yeah.
but other than that, like Andor's teeing us up for something fun.
Yeah, we'll get to that next year. My friend Cole said something to me the other night that I was pondering, and I was like, "Well, this makes sense." Actually, he thinks the show was originally intended to be 6 episodes, and that it could have been 6 episodes and probably would have been received a little bit better. And I was thinking that, yeah, you could have cut. To me, the whole Rashomon thing was not worth splitting those 2 flashback episodes into two. I think that could have been 1 episode and
That
just have it play
absolutely.
out linearly. I think that would have worked better for me, especially because they didn't fully commit to the Rashomon thing. Like
Mhm.
in the Jedi episode where we see the Jedi's perspective on the flashbacks, we're getting additional scenes from like the witch's perspective. It just they didn't go 100% with that, and I think that bugged me. So if you had cut those 2 episodes together and then also the two-parter with the big fight when they go and fight Chimera for the first time.
Right.
They arrive on that planet and Kelnaka is dead, and then they encounter Chimera and fight him. That could have been one, and you have 6 episodes. I think they all would have been stronger across the board and maybe better received. Would you agree with that?
I don't disagree. I think that's actually a really good point. Especially with when it comes to the Jedi thing. I think the only reason to split the flashback into 2 parts is to really amp up the horror of like the fact that it was Soul who killed their mother.
Yeah.
Um, but that being said, uh, yeah, but that being said, like I think like I don't think that moment still was it was pretty clear from the first flashback episode that stuff went real bad
Yeah.
when the Jedi showed up. It wasn't, and it was just kind of like the extent of the badness wasn't fully real. Like they wanted it to be more shocking. There should have been, it should have been a real reversal, and that's where the Rashomon element could have come in.
Yeah.
Except that Star Wars isn't really a universe in which subjective storytelling takes place. We don't like beyond like visions and
Right.
visions and whatnot. We don't have we don't have we don't get different points of view on a
Yeah.
thing. And I'm
Well,
not saying
they
that
did
that's not
kind of
something.
in the Last Jedi. Sorry to interrupt you. In the
Okay.
Last Jedi, we do kind of get those. They did the Rashomon thing in the Last Jedi. We see Luke Skywalker and Ben Solo at the like Jedi Training Academy, and we get like Kylo Ren's memory of it, Luke's memory of it, and then we kind of get the objective
But we don't get do we
viewpoint of it.
get I haven't rewatched it recently enough. Do we get 2 different versions of the same scene, or we do
Yeah.
get 2 different scenes?
No, we get different versions of the same scene.
Okay. And how different are they?
They're fairly different because in one, like Luke looks really angry when he ignites his lightsaber, like he's
Oh,
like,
yeah, okay, okay.
"Arr."
Now I'm remembering
Yeah,
this. Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So this has happened before. I just wanted to point out that it has happened before. There's a precedent.
You're completely correct to nitpick that. There is precedent for it, but it's in actually a very similar context. So
yeah.
It would be interesting. This is a question that would be really interesting to ask Leslie Headland is what Star Wars movie is her primary inspiration point? Because it kind of does feel like The Last Jedi has a real impact on this episode, on this series.
The other thing I was going to say is like some of the stuff they kept from us in the first flashback episode and then revealed in the second flashback episode, I was kind of scratching my head about, like the fact that May did start the fire. Like they wanted to leave that as a question.
Yeah, it had no impact.
Yeah, and there were all these theories like, oh, the Jedi really started the fire, or the witches really started the fire, and then it was just May. You know, like why not just give that to us the first time around? I don't know. That confused me a bit. Patrick says, I have this. Sorry.
I think the story might be crucial to the sequel.
Yeah, to the Rey movie, the upcoming Rey sequel movie. If the Jedi weren't flawed, why would Rey just found another Jedi Order? My guess is that her new group won't be called Jedi. Yeah, and there were theories floating around when the Rise of Skywalker title was revealed that they might call the new Jedi Skywalkers. You know, that did not pan out. She just took the name as her adoptive last name. But yeah, I think that's a good theory.
I mean, to the degree you think any Star Wars movie is happening in the next 5 years, what are the odds you think the next movie is the Rey sequel movie?
I think we know for sure that it is not. It is going to be The Mandalorian and Grogu.
Oh, right. Yeah, that which is actually in production right now.
Yes, they've built sets. I know I've seen leaks of set photos.
I hate to say this. Does that really count? Like it, like I'm glad that we're getting Star Wars back on the big screen again.
Yeah.
Love my boy Grogu. Love to see him get his moment in the sun. Does it really count? I mean, it does, but does it?
It counts as much as the X-Files movie counts. I will say that.
Oh yeah, and we'll have a whole conversation about that.
All right. I think have we missed anything, Liz? I wanted to talk about bleeding a kyber crystal. That's I want to know.
I want you to explain to me what that is.
Oh yeah.
I was like, and I also you have your chokehold question that I feel like is an important one.
Right. Okay. So bleeding a kyber crystal. This idea was actually introduced in the new canon in the Ahsoka novel, which came out, I don't know, 7-8 years ago.
And we all read that, so of course we should all know this.
I actually have not read it. My wife has read it and liked it. I think it was E.K. Johnston who wrote that. But this idea that the way a kyber crystal becomes red is basically like corrupted by dark side force power. There's no natural red kyber crystals. Basically, they're all, you're a Jedi. You go to Ilum, which is the planet where the younglings go and pick their kyber crystal, put it in their lightsaber, and the color of the crystal determines the color of the lightsaber blade. But a dark side force user like a Sith would usually kill a Jedi. And this happens in the Darth Vader comics too. Darth Vader would seek, this is how Darth Vader got his red lightsaber blade in the comics. In the current canon, he sought out one of the Jedi who survived Order 66. He murdered him, took his lightsaber, bled the lightsaber, meaning he turned it from blue or whatever color it was. The kyber crystal becomes red and the blade becomes red. And we got to see it for the first time in live action here in this episode of The Acolyte, which when that happened in the episode, I was like, okay, that's awesome. That was one of my favorite moments. I loved the fights. I loved the kyber crystal stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's okay. When it was happening, my thought was, oh, she's somehow using her abilities with the Force to heal the crystal. So initially, because it looked like it was the blue was just getting more blue, and then but then I think but her rage then corrupted it and then But I thought but from my first thought upon when it first started happening, my thought was, wow, can you be powerful enough as a Jedi to fix your own kyber crystal? That's cool.
Yeah. So that's the opposite of bleeding a kyber crystal, is called healing a kyber crystal. This also happens in the publishing side quite a bit. We saw Luke actually did it in a recent issue of the main like flagship Star Wars comic book, where he is given a red kyber crystal and is able to heal it. And I think that's becomes the green kyber crystal that he uses in Return of the Jedi. So yeah, it can go both ways. Absolutely. And I was super psyched to see that pop up in live action. And you mentioned you wanted to talk about the Force choke thing.
Well, I just thought it was an interesting point you made.
Yeah.
That it was like potentially the very first one.
Yeah. So I've seen this as another critique of the episode, pointing out that it was silly that this was maybe the first Force choke. My interpretation of this was that it was not the first Force choke, but it was just the fact that nobody had seen it for a long time, because obviously the Sith are extinct for 1,000 years or something, and it just happens to be a dark side Force power that nobody has witnessed for a long time. And Chimere has given May at the beginning of this season the task of killing a Jedi without using a weapon. And we don't know that this is what he is asking for, this Force choke, but by the end it's Osha who is the one who kind of lashes out with her anger and performs the Force choke. I didn't read it as this was the first time that it ever happened. I know other people have, that this was like the creation of the Force choke ability, but I certainly, it was her discovery, her personal discovery of it. I don't know. What do you think, Liz?
Okay. I'm for one thing, I feel like the Force is a weapon.
Yeah.
If used in this way.
Yeah, sure.
Ergo, you are not killing a Jedi without a weapon. But also, like, I find it really interesting, and this is just like my being, maybe this is a little pedantic, but does a Force choke count as a dark dark Force power? It's really, it's like it goes into the weaponry thing. Like, you know, if you have the Force, you could crush a can if you wanted to,
right?
And that would not be a fundamentally evil action. Right. Crushing a windpipe, yes, different. But it's like we're talking. It's like I'm just like, yeah, I get, like, I'm being pedantic about like whether or not.
No.
But like
no, but this argument has been going on for many years. Whether Force choke is a dark side power, as you would probably not be surprised to hear this. But
I'm glad I'm diving into a field of rich scholarship that I can fully explore.
Well, go back and watch the opening of Return of the Jedi when Luke arrives at Jabba's palace. And take a look and watch it frame by frame and tell me whether he's using Force choke on those Gamorrean guards when he goes in, because people have argued that he is, and therefore maybe it's not a dark side power. I don't know.
But that's one of the aspects of the original trilogy that's so fascinating, is like it's essentially it's kind of like what if, like, in 1,000 years in the future, you know, well after any regulation is gone, a group of a society happened to stumble across like a bunch of abandoned nuclear weapons that we'd buried beneath the ground, and they're like figuring out how to use these things, and like what are the rules about using nuclear weapons and all that. This is an exaggerated example, but I find it, the fact that the idea of trying to figure out creating your own ethos around this kind of power in a post-collapse situation, like when you're, and this goes back to what we're talking about also with Rey, maybe starting up her own team or her own band or whatever, and calling it whatever the hell she wants, like, you know, without the Jedi Council overseeing this stuff, like, you get to make your own rules. There's something really compelling about that, and I think that's actually, it's from what I've explored around Luke Skywalker's journey, both in the films and also in some of the ancillary material I have explored. That's a really compelling element of his narrative, is how do I rebuild the Jedi in this new society, in this new era.
Right. And we got to see Luke do that in the expanded universe, Legends continuity novels, and we will theoretically get to see Rey do it if and when this movie happens, a new movie with Daisy Ridley. So very curious to see how that shapes up. Liz, anything else that you want to mention or talk about regarding the Acolyte? Yeah, there are a few other little nagging questions on my list, but these are all like up to your own interpretation things. I think there were little moments that again had me scratching my head, like what exactly is going on here in this episode. But I think people are reading these moments all sorts of different ways. But what about you? Anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap up?
I mean, I really hope that past episodes you've done on the show have really touched on the hotness of Manny Jacinto. I really hope you devoted a lot of discussion time to it. I'm just really excited for him as an actor because he was so good on The Good Place, and he's gotten a few smaller parts in other things, but it's one of those things where he had a couple of moments on The Good Place where you were just like, this guy can do a lot more than he's doing here. Like, he's playing a very specific character. When you're playing a very specific character like he was on that show, it's hard to show like the degree of range that you can have. And it's just like, just knowing he's capable of pulling off a part like this, hotness aside, I do really hope that we get a second. Number one reason I want a second season is for more of him. And even if we're not necessarily the most optimistic about that happening.
Not only do I want a second season for more adventures with these characters, but I also want Manny Jacinto's character to get an action figure, because the first 6
I was going to ask,
action figures do not include Chimere or the Stranger, which it feels like you always need the villain. And as shades of gray as we got with some of these Jedi characters, you need that villain character for
how are you gonna bash them together for your lightsaber fights? Like,
exactly,
you're gonna bash like it's I was going to ask if he had an action figure, and if he was hot.
The first 6 are Soul, Master Indara, Carrie Ann Moss character, Osha, May, Yord, and what's the little girl's name?
Daphne Keene. I don't know. I don't remember the actor. I can tell you the actress name. No, and I will say, at least they got Yord in there. Yord, the next round of action. I think my guess would be that they didn't produce a Chimere. Chimere? Chimere. They didn't produce a Chimere figure because of the spoiler aspect.
Yes,
and he'll be in the round 2.
Secret, yeah.
But
that would be great. Or they just do a one-off, because I think that would be I hope that these sold well, by the way. But do a one-off of Chimere or the Stranger in that sweet Cortosis armor and helmet. Boy, I would like that.
Well, you have to be able to take the helmet off. That's important.
Kiki wants a second season with different writers and directors. Okay. Well, to each their own. Maybe we will get a Manny Jacinto animated episode or a video game. That would be fun.
Yeah, but you'd have to render those arms. I'm not trying to objectify Manny Jacinto. I do genuinely think he's a talented actor with a lot of potential.
I haven't watched I saw the first episode of The Good Place. It didn't grab me, but you
gotta dig in with that one. Okay. It's full of delights. You'll love it.
Okay. Let's wrap up our discussion of the Acolyte. I didn't give my overall thoughts.
Yes,
I liked the show. I didn't love it. I thought it really definitely had its moments, and it definitely also had moments where I was like, this could have been done. Like, I got what they were going for, but they only got 70% there in certain moments. But I don't know. Liz, do you want to give a overall thought on the series?
I think I'm kind of on the same page with you. Like, I think there's a lot of cool potential here, and I think it's really important to remember that sometimes TV shows don't immediately figure out what kind of TV show they are.
Well, yeah.
And
how many shows did we grow up on where they didn't get great until season 3?
Oh God,
it was always season 3. The Simpsons, The X-Files.
Yeah, no, and you've got glimmers of it when you have potential. I think the biggest issue with the Acolyte is that because they killed off so many characters in its first season. They will really have to rebuild up the ensemble, but I think they can. There are people who want to play in this universe, and I think it's got a lot of potential. I think there is room for this show to grow and expand and be cool and interesting. And I think one of the few things I take comfort in is the fact that at least this is kind of out the gate, and there's it's established now. And theoretically, I don't know how many other big buzzy Star Wars titles there are coming up.
Skeleton Crew is the one I'm psyched for. It's the Goonies in Star Wars Galaxy.
That's again, and then this going back to the very beginning. Like, I am all for this stuff. Like, you know, I to let people play in this universe, and we'll see what comes out of it.
Yeah. And gosh, I do want to mention also that the action was so well put together in the Acolyte. I rarely like the action more than the talking in anything, because I'm a story guy and action usually bores me, but I thought all the action was really, really exciting and fun in the Acolyte. So kudos to the action designer and fight choreographer and all the actors who had to learn all that stuff, because it was impressive.
I mean, I just love the touch of, you know, if you're going to cast Carrie-Anne Moss as a Jedi, just let her be Trinity. Like, just let her be a little bit Trinity, and you will deliver one of the best action scenes of the Star Wars year. I should have probably mentioned that one when you asked me before, but it's so good. It's so that opening fight is so good.
Yeah. All right. Last segment here on Who's the Bossk is called First Steps into a Larger World, where we talk about the media we've been consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. I really just want to talk with you some more about this show, Evil.
Let's talk about Evil, man.
I'm up to season 4. I've watched the first episode of season 4, so I'm getting there. I know they're almost done releasing the episodes, but I feel like I'll be caught up around the time the finale comes out. And I'm kind of obsessed with the show, even though it is very silly at times. It really makes me think of this episode. You'll appreciate this, Liz. This Darren Morgan penned episode of Millennium. I knew you were right there on the same page as me. It's like we got an entire series of Somehow Satan Got Behind Me, and I love it. It's super goofy. It's super creepy at times. And yeah, geez, Evil, go watch it. It's on Paramount Plus. You can watch the first 2 seasons on Netflix, actually, but then there are 2 additional seasons that were made directly for Paramount Plus, and you have to go watch those there. I'm into this show. Liz, do you want to talk more about Evil? Or do you want to talk about something else?
I will just reaffirm. Like, I actually finished it. Yes, Kiki and Luca, we were talking about the show Evil. We're not talking about the concept of evil, though. We are. I think we're less big fans of the concept of evil than we are the show Evil.
Yeah,
like I rank
I mean,
the show
Evil
of
Evil
one
is definitely interesting on a storytelling level.
Oh yeah,
I don't recommend it in real life.
No, Evil the TV show, great. Evil as a concept in fiction, interesting. Evil in real life, bad. Yeah. That's my ranking.
Okay.
That's what I do for a living, is I rank things.
That's your next list for.
That's my next list. Evil ranked. So, but yeah, no, I really enjoyed. I'm only through season 2. I need to finish. I need to dive into. I need to get through seasons 3 and 4.
Liz, in season 3, there is a season-long arc about a shrunken head being flushed down a toilet. That's a spoiler for you.
To quote another film outside the Star Wars universe, you had my curiosity, now you have my attention. So yes, I need to catch up with Evil. I'm also going to throw in a show I love that if that might not be appropriate for everyone watching this podcast, is the show Harley Quinn.
Okay.
Which is a very profane, very funny, very violent DC Comics adaptation that runs on Max, and they just released a spinoff series called Kite Man Hell Yeah. That's
heard about that.
Yes, and so I don't know when next Harley Quinn the new season of Harley Quinn is coming, but Kite Man's a nice interlude. Kite Man is not my favorite character from the original show, but I still I'm still really enjoying the return to that particular ethos and mindset, and also for some reason they didn't bring back Giancarlo Esposito to play Lex Luthor in Kite Man.
Okay.
They instead, so I guess they must have recorded this a while ago. Lance Reddick plays Lex Luthor, and one of the things we didn't get to see enough of from Lance Reddick was comedy. But every time he did comedy, it was so funny. Yeah. And so his take on Lex Luthor is really delightful.
Have you seen the DuckTales episodes that he was in?
I have not.
Oh, you got to check those out.
Oh man,
And the recent DuckTales reboot, he was one of the, you wouldn't really call him a villain, but he kind of was, yeah, right in the line there. But you got to check those out.
Yeah.
Really quickly, I want to let you
oh,
go. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to throw in a plug for another great Lance Reddick
Okay.
comedy thing, which is if you're already on Paramount Plus because you're watching Evil season 3 and 4, Corporate was this amazing three season series for Paramount Plus.
Okay.
Lance Reddick played the boss of a major corporation. He was introduced in the pilot episode, doing his morning workout routine, including swinging around a samurai sword. I really can't recommend that show highly enough. It was so delightful. And
Corporate?
yeah, anyways, corporate, yes. Anyways,
nice. I got to check this out. I promised I would let you go by 11, but I wanted to ask you one more question about pop culture.
Oh, sure.
I'll
be fine. We can go.
As a fan of the DC Comics universe, what is your kind of like one sentence looking forward to this James Gunn heralded, spearheaded initiative coming up? What is the state of the DCU to you?
Can't be worse than Joss Whedon's Justice League.
All right, there you go. A step up from the Zack Snyder, Joss Whedon.
Yeah, I think it doesn't seem like my real answer is my big takeaway from Zack Snyder's DC universe was that Zack Snyder really hates superheroes. So I'm excited to watch a movie. Excited to watch movies and TV shows where the creators ostensibly do not actually hate their main characters.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Looking forward to that as well. That's going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of Who's the Bossk. Big thank you to my guest, Liz Shannon Miller, for coming back on the show and talking about the Acolyte with me. Liz, where do you want to send people to find you on the internets?
Well, if you go to consequence.net, you can find all my writings. My aforementioned Entourage ranking is on the front page right now. You can also, I'm technically on Twitter, but I'm still calling it Twitter, so you can tell how often I'm there.
Yes, we've all jumped that ship, I think.
Yes, I'm largely on Blue Sky now. I like Blue Sky. It's quiet, it's small, but you can find me at lizlet.bsky.social. So just search for Lizlet and you'll find me. And I'm also on Instagram at Liz Shannon, and I guess also Threads at Liz Shannon. Though, and I know you're very active on Threads right now, Mike. Actually,
you're fairly active, yeah.
I know this because every time I check in on Threads, you're usually at the very top of my For You feed.
Usually ranting about the Acolyte, and
it's nice. I get to check.
What am I going to rant about now? I don't know.
If only there was if only something else would happen in pop culture.
And Kiki and Lucas said thanks for the show, guys. Thanks for watching and commenting, for sure. Next week on Who's the Bossk, like I said at the top, Mike and David Movie Club, we're going to be talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey with a special guest who's not Mike or David, but his favorite movie is 2001: A Space Odyssey, so we brought him in for that episode. I'm on Instagram at Who's the Bossk Pod, and as always, please visit laughingplace.com. Thank you out there for listening and or watching live. Liz, thanks again. We'll see you real soon. Bye.